Good evening. Yes, the silence. So welcome to the Handley Page lecture for 2023, co-sponsored by Cranfield Aerospace and Aviation Alumni Association and the Royal Aeronautical Society. My name is Dougie Hunter. I'm chair of the Cranfield Aerospace and Aviation Alumni Association. I am a Cranfield College of Aeronautics alumnus from 1985. I've had an ongoing association with the university for many years since then, including as a member of the University Council and as a speaker for this lecture quite a few years ago now. The Handley Page lecture is dedicated to the Handley Page Company and Sir Frederick Handley Page in particular. Sir Frederick was a member of the 1983 Fedden Committee that was instrumental in establishing the Cranfield College of Aeronautics in 1946. He subsequently served on the College Council and was a past president of the Royal Aeronautical Society. Sir Frederick passed away in 1962, but Cranfield and the Royal Aeronautical Society wished to honour his memory by creating the Handley Page Lecture, the first of which was delivered by His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh on the 21st of May 1963, with the title Education for Technology. I would now like to introduce you to our speaker for the Handley Page lecture for 2023, Dwayne Lucas, Vice President Special Projects for the Aerospace Industries Association of Canada. Brigadier General, retired, Lucas attended the Royal Military College, graduating with a BEng. His first Royal Canadian Air Force tour in the 1970s was in Germany on CF-104 starfighters. After his operational tour, he returned to Canada and worked on the new fighter aircraft program before heading off to Cranfield to study aircraft design, all the best people do, in preparation for delivery of the new aircraft. In 1981, he returned with his MSc in aircraft design and applied his new skills on the recently acquired CF-18 Hornet. During his career, he worked in various Royal Canadian Air Force roles, from operational to headquarters, and culminating his 35-year Royal Canadian Air Force career as Chief of Staff, Personnel Training and Support, and the Director General for Aerospace Equipment, which included the Royal Canadian Air Force Technical Airworthiness Authority. Pretty good. Following his military career, he joined Cascade Aerospace, a specialty aerospace and defense company, as the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. He helped transform the company into an accomplished engineering and maintenance operation focused on customer operational capability. He then went on to focus on research and development, being the Western Director for the Consortium of Aerospace Research and Innovation Canada, helping develop projects with industry from advanced composites, UAVs, Earth observation, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and pilot fatigue. He also privately consults with several aerospace companies on strategy and business development. Currently, he is the Aerospace Industries Association of Canada Vice President, Special Projects, focused on advancing Canada's aerospace vision for the future. And you can tell by the title of his lecture, Where Next for Canadian Aerospace? That's what we're going to hear about this evening.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you very much, Dougie Hunter, for those kind words. I'm absolutely pleased to be here. It is wonderful. I hope you get a little bit of insight into what Canadian Aerospace is about. I'm not going to ad lib, which my wife tells me is always dangerous at times because we get into multiple stories. But hopefully you'll find some interesting information that I can share with you tonight. So again, warm thanks to the Royal Aeronautical Society for inviting me to speak here today. I recognize this is a very important event. And as Dougie said, the first person to present the Handley Page lecture was the late Duke of Edinburgh. So it's clear I have big shoes to fill. I hope I do it justice tonight, as I love aerospace and everything that it entails. Aerospace has enriched my life immeasurably through the experiences I've had and the people I've had the honor to work with and to lead. It's a full circle moment for me. As a young man from the Canadian prairies, stubble jumper as they call us in Saskatchewan, to come here and study at Cranfield. I completed my master's in aircraft design, and now after a long career in the military and civilian aerospace, I'm delighted to be returning. Of course, times have changed since then. We're in a different geopolitical environment. The competitive landscape in aerospace has changed and diversified, and we now face pressing challenges in environmental sustainability and world security. It's a time of unbridled opportunity, but at the same time, it is fraught with risk. Each country is finding its place in the new context, including Canada. And that's the focus of my talk today. The state of Canadian aerospace currently, what's happening in the industry, what is the outlook as mobility is redefined and economic sustainability and world security stresses intensify. Canada has a proud history in aerospace, but we've seen some significant changes and challenges in the last few decades. Defense aerospace procurement has gone offshore with the related loss of intellectual capability and capacity. Aerospace R&D, although the most intensive of all manufacturing industries within Canada, has fallen relative to the rest of the world. And new emerging nations are challenging our market position. Once in the top 5 in the world, Canada has slipped considerably. Despite these factors, Canada is one of just a few nations with the capability to conceive, design, certify, and manufacture aircraft and spacecraft. We are blessed with some of the world's best aerospace companies, large, medium, small, and some of the world's most highly skilled talent. We have great opportunities before us, and yet the competitive environment is intense. We're at a critical inflection point, in my view. Without a proper articulated national strategy, we stand the chance to lose significant aerospace growth. Over the next while, I'll endeavor to show you where Canada sits in the world of aerospace from my perspective. I believe we are all well positioned to reestablish ourselves as a global leader if we establish a clear, comprehensive national aerospace strategy, and we coalesce our capabilities and skills that exist within the country today. I will give you a bit of the world perspectives to give you a bit of a sense, because I think that's our case for action. I'll then talk about some of the history and lessons learned, because I think it's very important. Aerospace is very sinusoidal. I'll give you a scan of the Canadian aerospace as it exists today within our country. And then I'll identify a whole bunch of programs and enablers that are taking place across the country, not fully coordinated, not fully aligned, but excellent work, each of them in themselves, and finally bring to a conclusion to my original premise. While Canada's effort during COVID to support our aerospace industry was comparable in terms of size and support to other nations, they were not as transformative as those of other nations such as France and Germany. Those countries not only committed more funding to the sector, but also focused on driving growth agenda for the future and coming years. There are important market structure factors at play as well, most notably shifting power dynamics, the emergence of Asia as a key player, diminishing platform capability in places like Europe over the last 3 decades. In defense, movement towards unmanned, network-centric, asymmetric warfare is redefining battlefield engagement and the costs of war. And we're seeing increased alignment across the Russia, China, North Korea, Iran military-industrial complex. In parallel, we're seeing the de-globalization of supply chains driven by COVID and the Ukraine-Russia crisis. Supply chains are moving home. Changing commercial markets. Canada faces new industry competition for market entrants such as India, China, and South Korea. In the large commercial aircraft market, specifically, the strongest growth is expected in Asia Pacific, the Middle East, and Africa. The current geopolitical situation is also driving wedges in the marketplace, where the drive for national and sovereign capability is taking precedence. You just have to look at India, Turkey, and South Korea, where significant aerospace expertise is being developed, primarily through defense investments. These investments will spin off into the civilian marketplace, which will put more pressure on countries such as Canada to maintain or grow their aerospace sector. A key point to keep in mind is that 80% of our products that we produce in aerospace in Canada go offshore. 60% of them in the supply chain. The other 20% are aircraft. With a relatively small population, we need to trade to help generate wealth. We have no choice but to compete internationally. The world is our market. Despite these challenges, Canada currently has the capacity to rally and regain a world-leading position because of our country's history of excellence in aerospace, our unique capabilities, and a strong economic and political environment that supports innovation. Although if you want a place to live in Canada and to buy a house in Canada, you need to take a loan as big as to buy an airplane. It's very expensive. I know the same problem exists within many countries here in the UK too, but housing in Canada is a significant social issue. Let me talk about R&D investment. Well, the aerospace industry investment in R&D is number one among all manufacturing industries within Canada. It doesn't measure up when compared with other nations. We're a leader in higher education R&D spending, but we have low investment in R&D on the industrial side compared with countries such as Japan, the United States, and the UK. We are building academic talent, but we struggle with that black hole between research and commercialization. Bridging the gap must be a key focus of the Canadian Aerospace Industrial Strategy. We need to put in place tools to support and accelerate the transition from research to putting viable industrial products out into the market. Canada is doing work in this area, but more work needs to be done. I just want to touch on global defense spending. This is a major issue because I think you need to look at the spin-off benefits of defense R&D and manufacturing for the civilian sector and vice versa. As an example, I think of when Canada procured a new fighter aircraft and undertook significant R&D in the fields of composites and advanced manufacturing, which played directly into the development of commercial capability in Canada. As Dougie said, when I returned from my postgrad here, and I was sent here to learn about composites and design of airplanes and manufacturing of composites, and went back with our new aircraft, I was continuously going down to McDonnell Douglas in St. Louis to get information on design curves for composites, because we had just bought an airplane. We had done 2 leaps in generation of an aircraft and really did not understand how it was put together. We called it the plastic whiz jet at first because there was more plastic than metal, but that's where I think we need to go. And you will see here the amount of money that's been spent in this domain. So where are we as Canada stands today? Where will we go from here? We must recognize that the changes we're seeing across the aerospace landscape represent a significant opportunity to drive innovation and to lead as an industry transforms. This will require a properly articulated strategy that is appropriately funded. I can remember a time early in my career when my team briefed the air commander on what we thought was a brilliant plan, a brilliant activity. He asked what strategy it was linked to. We hadn't thought about that. We were thinking at the tactical level. We were good practitioners of delivering air power. Needless to say, he stated quite emphatically that without a proper strategy, any plan, any activity can work. We were going to say, is strategy not the responsibility of the commander? But prudence prevailed, and we responded, yes, sir, and got on with reading both the Air Force and government strategy to realign our project. Canada needs to make a conscious decision to be part of the future of aerospace. We're very well positioned to do this, but we need to set a clear strategy to coalesce our capabilities. I'm not suggesting doom and gloom for Canada, just the opposite. We will continue to move forward in the aerospace sector regardless. but without a clear strategy, we will lose out on opportunities. Specifically, the chance to excel and be leaders in sustainability, advanced air mobility, certification, aircraft design and production. Collaboration will be key, and we'll need to work closely with like-minded nations to seize the moment. Countries such as the UK, with whom Canada has a strong historical relationship and shared values, we need to be close at hand. The future workforce will be key. Where you people sit today, you will be fundamental to the aerospace future of tomorrow. The industry is attractive. It is a great opportunity for all of you. And if you can't find a job, come to Canada. We'll try and find you a place to live and not give you a tent when you come in the door. We can look back at the 1950s for inspiration, a time when multiple design programs were underway, both civilian and military. There were thousands of design engineers working on the latest technologies, along with the associated supply chain made up of large companies and small. The aerospace domain was in full throttle, and small, including space satellite. We were the third nation in the world to launch a satellite into space. And we had great collaboration with the UK. In fact, it was our greatest collaborator through the 50s and 60s, followed by the US. It was a time of great optimism in the industry. Let me take a few minutes to retrace some of the excellence and key historical milestones, because I think it puts a little foundation where we are. Because as I mentioned, aerospace is sinusoidal. When it goes down, it goes back up. In the 1990s and 50s and 60s was an important era for Canadian aerospace. Multiple companies were developing civilian and military aircraft. Canada became the third nation, as I mentioned, to launch a satellite into space. It lasted 10 years, providing valuable information on the ionosphere that was shared worldwide. We were very active in today what we call skunk works, special research centers, building, testing, flying cars, flying saucers. All kinds of unique configurations were coming out and doing all kinds of conceptual work. It was a very exciting time. We were building jet airliners, modern military aircraft such as the CF-100 Canuck, and ultimately the Avro Arrow, which was truly a superlative aircraft. I show the Avro Arrow because it was a major transition point in the industry. The termination of the program saw a loss of thousands and thousands of engineers, designers, and skilled tradespeople. I will not go into the politics around the decision, but just to make a note, the Prime Minister of the day, John Diefenbaker, lived 2 blocks up the street from where my family was in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. I don't know my dad, who is an aviator bush pilot, was going to go down the street to knock on his door. But I think he thought better of that at the time. You also saw the same issue here in the UK with the TSR-2. Governments procured aircraft offshore that were not really fit for purpose after that. So it was short-sighted decision-making. But like most militaries, the countries got on with it and made it work. But the shining light of the era was the majority of the skilled workers moved south and worked on US NASA moon programs. I would say that there was a make-believe on the lunar module Eagle as it landed on the moon, because the majority engineers working on that program were Canadian. As I talk about what was taking place, defense programs were diminishing, the civil industry was flourishing. The depth in aerospace design and development was very significant. Canada is such a large country, the north is wide open, we have large coastal with no roads. So the iconic de Havilland Bush aircraft of that decades were a testament to the longevity, as models of these aircraft, the Beaver, Otter, Twin Otter, still operate today throughout Canada's north and the coasts of our country and throughout the world. These airplanes were all born of military requirements. I mean, the Beaver and Twin Otter was to carry barrels of fuel in the case of the Otter and plywood in the case of the Twin Otter. So the opening on a Twin Otter was built to carry a 4x8 sheet of plywood. That was one of the prime design characteristics of the airplane. The skills in the industry were significant. They were being employed in ship design like the broad door, and they were moving into satellite development. It was an era of great invention. The development of airplanes, lots of research, cross-pollination between civil and military, and a heyday of collaboration with the UK and the US. That era of tremendous innovation ended with the demise of the Avro Aero. After which Canada began building airplanes under license. We shifted from design and development to licensed manufacturing, and engines and radar development fell off. Our defense research establishment was transferred to the NRC, the National Research Council, and defense aerospace development declined. We were using triple spool engines at that time, which took many, many more years to come into the vogue throughout the world in both civil and military contexts. The key takeaway here is it takes generations to build the skills and know-how to build a robust aerospace industry. You do not do it overnight. Again, let me hit on the history. In the 70s, 80s, there was innovation in space. The invention of the Canadarm, satellites were going up. And at this time, Bombardier came onto the scene. It began to arise, establishing its foothold in the industry. Bombardier purchased Canadair during this period, and the growth of the industry was on the rise. The Challenger business jet was born, and a major success with its superb aerodynamics and large fuselage cross-section. Great argument between the Whitcomb and some of the wing designs that the Americans heralded, which in our view took place in Canada on the special aerodynamics. And when you look at this airplane, even today, it has some really unique characteristics. If you want to get into detail, I can show you small changes that are done on the Challenger series today and the global airplanes, small changes that gave 1% and 2% increase in range. We also got into a number of programs on drones and specialized. The CL-84 was an airplane that was what we're talking about today, advanced air mobility and stuff. There was a very major transition in the 2000s with Bombardier realigned its aerospace business and sold off the C series to Airbus, which is now the A220. Again, I won't delve into the politics. Here it could be the subject of another lecture. Despite this, the technological developments in the fields of composites, aerodynamics, and passenger comfort were significant. Okay, where are we today? Canada's history and heritage as an aerospace innovator is indisputable. And yet, as outlined, we have seen a slip in our ranking in the global industry. Still, aerospace remains a key sector, an important contributor to the Canadian economy. There are just a few of the key metrics here at a glance. We contribute $27 billion to the gross domestic product of the country. And last year, there was 212,000 jobs in the business, an increase of 14,000 from 2021 at the peak of COVID. We are a country that ranked in the top 5 across civil flight simulators, CAE, one of the world's class, mid-size engines in Pratt & Whitney, PT6 is a good example, and civil aircraft subcomponents in 2022. And aerospace outranked all other Canadian manufacturing, as I mentioned in R&D. So this is a big industry. We have 18 to 20 billion of goods and service that go to over 100 countries. So we are a worldwide player here. Here's our ecosystem of players are truly diverse. We're home to large OEMs, Canadian, American, and European companies, supported by a strong supply chain of inventive small and medium-sized enterprises. We have capability across the country with key hubs in Toronto and Montreal. Having this dispersed positioning allows us to access the skilled labor in superb academic institutions. It's clear that this distribution will be essential as all industries chase the talent pool. People are the future for this industry. Although, as I mentioned earlier, housing and the cost of living is in the major city centers is a detrimental impact on our business. I digress, and as I mentioned, you can buy a house or rent an apartment in some regions of Canada that won't buy you a tent in Vancouver or Toronto. Innovation in the country. Here we get a sense of the relative size and distribution of the key areas of design, manufacturing, overhaul and maintenance and modifications. We have capability coast to coast with exciting new developments. If you're looking for a place to work, Calgary is building a new center just outside of Calgary, a major new campus where there'll be thousands of people, new runway, new capability, engineering center of excellence. It's moving out of Toronto. It will become another aerospace hub. It's looking for the great talent. It's tapping into educational institutions as the petroleum industry in that part of the country changes. Montreal still is the major center for aerospace in the country, closely followed by the Toronto region. Montreal has a complete aerospace ecosystem where it can conceive, design, manufacture, certified aircraft, both military and civilian. Montreal exudes aerospace in all of its forms. Toronto and region are a major center for aerospace and are having great synergies with the automotive industry, who are in the transition to electrical vehicles. There is tremendous battery research and electronics technology research going on with that part of the country, and there is sharing in the fields. It's also home to some of the finest educational institutes in the country. Let's take a look at what some of the aerospace companies are doing in our country. Innovation all around. As a national industry takes shape, the exciting technology and innovation is happening and on the ground and in the air. Canada is moving forward in key areas such as sustainable aviation, aerial firefighting, hydrogen, drone technology, AI, and Earth observation. These are just some of the companies that are forefront of the aerospace development. From the study of blended wing technologies to new power systems to AI and simulations, significant work is being undertaken to advance the field of aerospace. With these major companies as well are established and skilled supply chains that are innovative and entrepreneurial. We can manufacture anything for all the airplanes today, any piece of equipment that goes onto an aircraft. There's a strong entrepreneurial spirit in the industry. You have Harbour Air with the iconic Otter here that has been electrifying and is moving and is in final parts of certification and will be flying next year, paid customers and equipment moving up and down the West Coast. There's also a very strong sustainability push in the part of the country. The colloquial joke we have in BC is that everybody gets up in the morning and hugs a tree. So that's, if you're coming to that part of the country, you better love sustainable aviation. As AAM grows worldwide and certification agencies grapple with certifying the new forms of air transport, companies like Horizon Air are jumping into the fray to be part of the future Jetsons world. This is a former young colleague. He was a young officer that left the Air Force, fighter pilot, started this company and had an engineering degree. And I've got to hand it to him. He's come right back full circle, and he calls us regularly as they flown this model, 50% model, and just announced major financial support for the company. So they are moving forward. As mentioned earlier, beside the major players, there's significant manufacturing, O&M, and supply chains of innovative companies. These companies have built not just a Canadian offering, but worldwide customer base. We should highlight that a number of these companies have increased their capacities and capabilities through defense contracts, where the government defense focus has been on integrated service support. So making engines run better, overhauling them quicker and faster, making composite repairs quicker and faster have been key players in the industry. This area is close to my home because when I left the service, I worked with Conair closely and spent a year in France as we were selling this very airplane to the French Sécurité Civile. It's been a challenging summer in Canada, and we've seen with respect to forest fires. And I can tell you firsthand, if you want to see pictures later, there was fires less than a kilometer from our house with it. And good friends of ours lost part of their homes in these fires. So we know it's real, and it's happening firsthand, and it's happening throughout the world. Greece, Spain, France. But these are iconic airplanes. In all of those cases that I just mentioned, these countries utilize this de Havilland design of the 215, 415, and hopefully the 515, which they're considering right now to replace the current beautiful yellow airplane that's there. The other airplane, the Q400 here, is a modified de Havilland aircraft with a special tank, and was very involved in the engineering on this, and some very unique engineering decisions were made in this to make that tank work. It carries 3,000 pounds. We didn't have to change the longitudinal stability on the airplane. We didn't change the mass balance on the fuselage. There were some really unique engineering tricks that were done to allow us to get this through. And to make it happen, my engineers worked every night from 7 o'clock at de Havilland till 7 in the morning, because when we were running the FEN models, it would dim the lights in the plant. So de Havilland had us work through the night putting these airplanes forward. So we are leaders in this field, and I think this is one of our core capabilities for the future. Let me talk about some attributes. There's a lot happening coast to coast to coast. We're fortunate to have a strong economic and political environment in the country, a federal government that's supportive of industry's advancement. We have a fantastic network of academic institutions that will be essential for the future. Some of the core studies you do here will make the difference in the future of aerospace. And in my view, Canada can be home to you too. We have unique capabilities, and we're making strides if we act smartly and make the right decisions in the shorter term. Separate from our heritage as an aerospace innovator, I've said we have the ability to conceive, design, build, and certify aircraft end-to-end for a range of aircraft types. We have all the manufacturing capability needed: airframes, systems, undercarriage, avionics, and propulsion resident within Canada. Our certification authority, Transport Canada, is highly respected around the world. It continues to lead the way in industry policy and regulatory development, including most recently in advances in paving the way for social acceptance of remotely piloted aircraft system as part of its work in advanced air mobility. I would suggest, though, EASA has led the way in this area, and I think there has to be closer cooperation between our countries in this emerging field. They're also leading the way in sustainable aviation, working with the National Research Council on standards and test methodologies for new low-emission aircraft technologies. Academic institutes. We have an exceptional network of academic institutions and researchers in Canada. We're well positioned to build the engineers and highly skilled workforce of the future with the right focus and approach to curriculum development and training. I would suggest to you there is no better curriculum in development that takes place here at Cranfield. We need to emulate a lot of the work that you do here. A number of universities teaching aerospace at the undergraduate level has stayed fairly constant over the years, over the last decades. Most have adapted their courses to capstone projects that undertake where an air class works a full aircraft design. You'll become very familiar with that for those of you that are in your first year here. They also do individual projects. There's degrees at the master's and PhD level also. But there is a close liaison that we're building between industry and academia, which I think is so critical for the future and the transition for key companies. Effort in this is needed in our country to help the educational institutions offer the right combination of theoretical and practical learning. I must reiterate how important this element is to the future of aerospace in our country. This aspect is pivotal. If we do not get this right, we will not move forward. I need to highlight one institution in Canada that's made a big stride forward: the University of Waterloo. It is one of Canada's premier engineering university. In fact, it's the largest engineering university in Canada. It grew its wealth and its capability. If you remember back, for some of you, Research in Motion, the BlackBerry, the original handheld telephone originally came through this university and the research that was done there. Waterloo has now established an Institute of Sustainable Aeronautics, truly a unique approach that cuts across many academic disciplines. WISA for short, is bringing together people from different technology areas, forestry, health, chemistry, and other fields beyond the traditional aerospace to collaborate just not on topics such as propulsion, avionics, fluid dynamics, but also on broader questions. They're looking at challenges not vertically, but horizontally to get to real solutions that have global impact. You can see the different fields that they brought into a unified team within. The VPs and the deans of each of these functional areas meet regularly to discuss aerospace. Susan Cairns, the founding director at the Institute, captured it well when she said, WISA bridges the gap between evidence-based research and real-world innovation. WISA facilitates direct partnership with industry and government and academia to develop targeted solutions. This kind of approach will be key as Canada develops a national aerospace industrial strategy, a fundamental piece that we look at capability horizontally besides vertically. We need to bring in those traditional non-academic domains if we're going to excel in aerospace. I learned a lot when I was working on pilot fatigue, as we worked with medical folks and psychologists and learning behaviors as we studied pilot fatigue for aerial firefighter pilots. And it's a great discussion if you want to have some time after. I won't delve into it now, but we had some very interesting research on pilots that operate in this very difficult environment. Let me quickly transition to the defense area. It's a critical component of a national aerospace strategy. The link to R&D and the cross-pollination between civil and defense skills and capabilities are immutable. As one senior Air Force officer articulated to me, even though it sounds axiomatic, the sustainability thrust is key to the RCF of the future. It will reduce our logistics footprint. We must be a leader in this area. Exciting times in the RCAF today in Canada. Numerous new fleets are in acquisition. There's a major transitioning going on. Not since the 1980s has this taken place. In my view, it's the opportunity to leverage this transformation in the Air Force and work synergistically with civilian industry to accelerate the introduction of new technologies. We're in the midst of a defense update, and originally I was going to say it was very positive. We were going to see an increase in defense R&D, etc. But on Friday, the head of national defense stood up in government and mentioned that there will be a major reduction within the Defense Department. So when I go back in a week from now, we have a number of meetings with the Minister of Defense to hopefully try and change his opinion. With the current geopolitical environment, the realities of climate change, increased protection of intellectual property, the emergence of new Indo-Pacific strategy, the war in Ukraine, and resurgence of NATO, it seemed that it's time right for modernization and enhanced national capability. I anticipate that drones, AI, mobility will become key things as we move to the future. I watched how defense strategy in Australia has impacted the country's aerospace capabilities more broadly. Strategically, they have embarked upon developing national sovereign capability in a number of areas. One such program is the GOSPAC Autonomous Drone Program. The Australians, who had a nascent aerospace industry, have undertaken the design, development, and manufacture of an autonomous drone using solely 35 Australian companies. They've created a capability with significant spin-offs into the civilian sector. As Canada works forward on their policy update, it'll influence our strategy, and it's an area that we must look at closely as we move forward. I won't delve into this in detail, but this is just a pictograph to show you what's going on in Canada for a number of entities that have been built up in the last few years. This has all taken place within the last 3 years, these different entities to drive forward aerospace in particular. The one Canadian Innovation Corporation was created in February of this year, and it's an outcome-driven strategy. And it's to overcome that death hole that I talked about, or black hole that I talked about, that takes place from technology at the 1 and 2 level to get it up to the 3, 4, 5 level. And this one is going to work in projects from $0 to $20 million, the CIC. It's got a separate board. It's not responsible to government. It's an independent organization that they've set up, which in my view is unique, and it will help move forward significantly forward. The Strategic Innovation Fund is for projects greater than $20 million, and there's $2 billion that's put into that fund within the last year. So it's a significant program that the major companies attack, but the small, medium companies are in the Canadian Innovation Corporation. One of the things Canada did 3 years ago was set up innovation superclusters. These superclusters are critical on the way forward. The program of these clusters is to accelerate ecosystems across Canada. Digital technology, which is in Vancouver, advanced manufacturing, which is in Toronto, and scale AI, which is in Montreal. These are important advancements in their forging meaningful multi-sectoral collaborations. They've been significantly funded, and aerospace is playing a key role in a number of these, but they've created centers now that drive these innovation networks. To date, the cover has provided, as I mentioned, those $2 billion. National Research Council. This is core to our business as we move forward. It's an important cornerstone in the aerospace network. I should point out that this institution, in its past day, our own Professor Stollery, that was head of the College of Aeronautics a number of years ago, 60s, early 70s, he did research in the field of supersonics for the Concorde at these research facilities in Canada. Canada had one of the few supersonic tunnels at the time, besides the Americans in the UK. That again, to me, is these collaborative programs that we need to do between countries. This is where the NRC is. These are the different areas that they've now focused on, that they're part of their strategy as they move forward. You're all familiar with these areas and probably understand them better than I do in some of them. But this is where their core pieces are that they're moving forward. I just show the research, and I'll do this quickly. These are just a number of their different laboratories, etc., that they have. I should highlight on the research aircraft, they're replacing their complete fleet, and they'll be moving into a whole new fleet of aircraft there to advance for the future. And one of the focuses will be on advanced air mobility and sustainability. Cornerstone to anywhere we're going to go. Green transformation of aviation is a key priority for the industry and also our federal government. This is similar to most nations that are battling climate change as we go forward. Canada's Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act was enacted in June 21. It formalizes the legislation for Canada to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Our focused aviation climate action plan is illustrated here, and it was put out by Transport Canada and lays out the plan for long-term decarbonization of the industry. Among them, the development of new green technologies, ground and air operations, improvements widespread across sustainable aviation fuels. To achieve the targets laid out in the climate action plan, the government has invested considerable amounts of money to support this innovation. Our new ecosystem. This is what we did at the association. That principally was the work I was working on over the past 18 months. We led a comprehensive consultation with more than 450 participants from all regions in the country, including academia, industry, an industry-led initiative here to support innovation in Canada and create an aerospace ecosystem. These are the key things that we want to do for the next 20 to 30 years. This is the gateway to bring coherence to the plan on the ecosystems, the networks, the research centers, by orchestrating collaboration, facilitating access to resources, supporting R&D activities with an IP policy, which is critical, that will accelerate innovation. This is our first program, the Sustainable Aviation Technology of Canada, INSA. Following our consultations, the government announced $350 million to this program this spring for the green transformation of aerospace. It will establish a pan-Canadian industry-led aerospace network to fund collaborative research and develop projects with companies of all sizes in the supply chain. INSAT will focus on hybrid and alternate propulsion, aircraft architecture and systems integration, transition to alternate fuels, aircraft support infrastructure, and operations. As our president said, INSAT is the first step towards establishing a truly comprehensive aerospace ecosystem in Canada, one that will propel the industry towards sustainable aviation and ensure a global leadership. These are the areas that we will drive as we move forward in the sustainable field. This is an interesting activity. The Canadian Advanced Air Mobility Consortium is finally started to get a foothold in the advanced air mobility field. The program has been very strategic in bringing the City of Vancouver planning staff into the group to talk about greening the city by bringing planes of these nature into the country. The commitment is growing public acceptance, especially within Vancouver. I just highlight the number of companies that we have here. These are right across the board that are working in the advanced air mobility domain as part of the CAM initiative. You can see these different companies, many of them are not in the aerospace domain with it, but it's brought academia together, it's brought major players. Air Canada Cargo, for interest, is looking at this to move goods and services across it. But to me, what's key to this is we brought a multitude of different players that were not in the aerospace business before in and around the table to advance this capability. This, in my view, is the way you build teams for the future. These are the projects that they plan to drive. It would also involve a master plan to bring Toronto and Montreal into the play. Significant discussions are happening with Indigenous organizations within our country, which is a very important aspect as we work through our truth and reconciliation within our country. It will have a positive impact on Indigenous communities, helping to develop skills and knowledge and creating business development within these areas. I state again, this is another set of projects that are good, but they're not totally linked to the broader national strategy, which we need to move forward. This is a great initiative. We need to bring it together under the broader strategy. This again is another program, CARDIS. It's a digital infrastructure that we're establishing for a national network. It's just going into place. It should receive funding this year and be able to drive forward. But it'll be a network of huge, massive computers, if you want to call it, that will be able to be accessed throughout the country. Just another one of those cogs. Okay, let me conclude. More broadly, the aerospace innovation ecosystem in Canada is active, alive, and driving advances across the country. The industry is doing well. It consists of major OEMs, strong academic institutions, innovation clusters, as well as consortia, incubators, accelerators, all of these working actively to drive the industry forward. Now, what we need is a national strategy to bring the cohesion and coherence and provide new momentum to the innovation activities. We can be a reasonable player without a strategy, but with one, I think we can establish Canada as a new global leader. Canada has this foundation of prime companies, strong supply chain, great access to the world, fine academic institutions, world-class research facilities, multiple funding resources from government underpinning our nation. The only piece missing is a national coherent aerospace strategy. I believe we're at a nexus and must put a national team together of government and industry representative to get this done. The case for action, in my view, is clear. The opportunity sits before us. So as I conclude, from my former commander that said aptly, without a strategy, any activity project will work in the short term. But what you need is a proper linked strategy to be successful. So I love aerospace. I had a wonderful day yesterday at Shuttleworth, watching the airplanes fly. It was truly a perfect day in the English countryside, watching airplanes. It was pretty interesting for me to see them as our fathers flew a number of those airplanes that were there. But thank you very much for this. Dougie, over to you. Thank you.
So thank you ever so much for giving us the benefit of your insight. So I'd like you all to just join me in showing Dwayne our appreciation. We have the few gifts, so I think we've got something to help you make some
Will it
notes.
fit in carry-on luggage?
Depends who you're flying with. I think it's probably just over the size of a Ryanair.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you very much.
You can't leave without a model of the National Flying Laboratory aircraft. Right, it's a Swedish, not a Canadian aircraft. And then this is a little lapel badge that we give to our alumni. These are coveted. I've had Dame Helen remove mine because I wasn't an alumni, but you get one. So
Well, that's very much. Thank you very much. Very kind.
thank you.
Thank you.